Our next discussion aims to highlight and understand the CSR law and suggest a way forward with all the learnings that they have taken place over past 6 years since its implementation. The topic is CSR Implications, a reality check. May I invite on stage our panelist, Mrs. Mohini Daljeet Singh, Chief Executive, Max India Foundation at CSR of Max India Group. A social worker and an educationist, she started her social service journey by volunteering as a student with Mother Teresa's home, Prem Niwas in Lucknow. As CEO of Max India Foundation, Mrs. Singh has worked for the underprivileged on the health platform, benefiting 26 lakh beneficiaries at 704 locations and partnering with 410 NGOs, including my school PYDS. Ms. Suja Warriar, member of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting and Governance team in Infosys. With 2 decades of experience, she has also worked with the tribals on the Indo-Bhutan border for 2 years. She also worked on ground for relief and rehabilitation for tsunami Nagapatinam, Uttarakhand flood, and borderline violence. Krishan Arora, partner Grant Thorton, with over 15 years of professional experience with indirect tax practices, he shares his experience and knowledge regards GST and the not-for-profit implications. Vijay Ganpathy, moderator for this panel, partner and COO Think Through Consulting. Mr. Ganpathy has grassroots experience of implementing development programs. He has also been level involved in developing, monitoring, and evaluating systems involving both programmatic and financial aspects. The panel is for 45 minutes. We'll request all to share their experience for a couple of minutes and then get into a group discussion on CSR implication, a reality check. And keep some time also for audience to question answer.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the beginning, we will start with a presentation from Mohini Daljeet Singh on Max Foundation. Once that happens, then we will take the discussion forward and we will try to make it as interactive as possible because we have a very esteemed panel who have considerable experience of implementing CSR work. So not only questions related to CSR, its future and implications, we will have a discussion around it. Now to Mohini Daljeet Singh.
So we are right into the discussion on CSR, starting with the previous. Can you open it on? Oh, so just put the first one on. Put the first line down. This. I think many of the questions which came up, particularly I think the big thing is about NGO and the corporate and some of the others. I think as we speak, we will give our experiences as well. And thank you very much for this privilege of, permitting us to speak of our work as a case study. Max India Foundation completed 10 years of operations in January 2018. As I said, that we started in January 2008, where our founder chairman, Mr. Daljeet Singh, somebody mentioned, I think Richard mentioned how important it is for the promoter to be involved and to be himself philanthropically oriented, which I totally agree with. And that's the secret of our having barged ahead in 2008, well before the CSR Act 2013. Max India Foundation is the CSR wing of the Max Group, and this is some of our group companies. Being all of them being in the businesses of life, when we started, we made a very focused decision to work on healthcare for the underprivileged. being about life, and also it is our core competency. So obviously that is what we did. We provide healthcare solutions on the 4 platforms which are here mentioned. One is addressing health concerns, that is prevention and cure. I'll give details as we go along. You have to start with prevention obviously. Then awareness, which is very, very important. As you all know, most of the problem lies in awareness. So we do a lot of that. Then there are allied health problems like water, waste, sanitation. We'll talk about it. And in that, of course, the main healthcare surgeries and treatments is there, and then village adoption, which we recently, that is about 4 years back, we decided to focus all our energies on specific geographies to see the kind of impact it would have. And then we went into village adoption. We have 2 village clusters in Uttarakhand and 1 in Punjab. Now this is the way we execute, that is the project, and it is supported by the companies. We implement directly as well as through NGOs. Volunteers are welcomed and are also necessary in the sense that our health camps that we do, we have our doctors from Max Healthcare, we have our medical staff who volunteer. We don't pay them for their services, but we request them. And that is how we build up. We are a very small core group, Max India Foundation, but we work through our contact persons across the company. The first point I spoke about was prevention, and that to me is most important. The first thing we have to do is protect a child with immunization. No doubt it's a government project, but in the government's own reckoning, less than 40% or 60 now are immunized fully. So we fill the gaps and we go to those areas where they are not immunized. The government way of doing it is that there are rather primary health centers where you are supposed to go and get it done. But a lot of people just don't go there, and a lot of people are just not convinced. So this has to be done, and we do it through a lot of NGOs who work on the ground with the geography, with the communities, or it could be through government schools, or it could be through orphanages. So we have, there are numbers are here. We have reached out to a number of children. MMR was earlier not. Now the government is giving some amount of MMR, but it wasn't giving it earlier. So we started with mass MMR. Hepatitis B also in some places it has now started getting it. Then typhoid is still not happening. DT, and the latest is the HPV, which is against cancer. Being an expensive vaccine, it's not happening, but recently in Delhi, the Delhi government has started it in a limited way, and we are very happy that we've started it with a specific funding, and that is from different group companies we allocate. Now this is for this, it's a special project. Then we do health camps, which are for screening, general health camps in Delhi, in NCR, in Punjab, in Uttarakhand. We've also, this photograph on top is in Gaya, in Bodh Gaya, in fact, in Bihar. We've done it in Ladakh, we've done it in various other places. And there have been a lot of beneficiaries. And my core team goes out 4 days a week, every week, here in the NCR to the various slum areas and the little rural pockets within our capital city. So we do that on an everyday basis. Now, surgeries and treatments is something which I feel very humbled because of who we are. We can actually do this. You know, when a person is diagnosed with a serious illness like cancer, or there are many children who need cardiac surgery, there are very few places they can go to if they can't afford it. Normally in a government hospital, there's a long line. There are good government hospitals with excellent doctors. But just like Ruby was saying, there's no place to stand. So you can imagine the kind of lines they have, the kind of waiting, and a lot of people can't wait. If you have a tumor, you may not be able to live till you get your surgery. So we feel that yes, we must do it, and Max India Foundation does it with the expert expertise of the Max Healthcare doctors in our Max Healthcare hospitals. We fund it and we get, of course, a discount. And we have done several and we feel extremely humbled at the lives that we have touched. And here, when we speak of a life, it's not a life, it's a family. Every life that you save, it's a whole family that you have benefited. Particularly for cancer, people come from all over India, and many times the bread earner has to leave his job or they sell their lands before they come here. And then somehow they approach us through our NGO partners. Sometimes the hospital says we've got a patient who has just 1 lakh, but then after that what? So we help out. Health awareness, as I said, is extremely, extremely important, and this is something we do all the time, every time, and I talk to all our partner NGOs that please propagate. So we have, these are some of the focus areas which I must mention. Ruby, you'll be happy to know that cancer is one of our big focus areas. And so oral cancer, being the way it is in India, anti-tobacco enforcement is very big on our list. And all these challans which have started in Delhi in the last few years, you'll be happy to know that we are responsible for it, because we have done a training of the Delhi police. This is, COTPA is the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act, which was in place, but it was not being implemented. And the police, they weren't even aware that they're supposed to challan people, and then they have other things which probably are more important. But we've had training, when they have their training sessions, we request for an hour. We take some of our survivors, we take our doctors, and we go there and we teach them, tell them about the ills. And I have to tell you, on one of the first days, first training, I went along, and one of the constables, after hearing, I don't know what he was, he raised his hand and he said, "Madam, agar itna hi nuksan hota hai, to government isko ban kyun nahi kar deti?" And I felt like saying, I totally agree with you, but there are, a lot of things to be done. Anyway, so that's happening very well. Then we also talk about dengue and then cancer awareness in a big way, particularly about early diagnosis, particularly about self-examination for breast cancer and other things. So the ways we do it is, one is puppet shows. Now, Richard was talking about Enactus, and I felt very happy that we are actually associated with a number of Enactus groups. Sri Ram College of Commerce, Hindu College, and Guru Gobind Singh Commerce College, where they come and, we've been working with them. In fact, one group is going to Dehradun with my team to our village. So we've been working with them. And Sri Ram College Enactus started this working with Katputli Colony, and they had these puppeteers. So we sponsored certain themes, like we paid them the money to train, we approved the script, we gave them the topic. So we have on a number of things, dengue prevention, smoking. Recently, the one we just started is on immunization, tika karna, and many of them. So when we do health camps, even washing hands, and when we do health camps, we take them along. So the community is very happy. They connect, they hear, and especially children, when you see something in many audiovisual, it has greater impact. And then the puppeteers are making money, they earn a living, and we are able to propagate. So that has worked out very well. We've made a number of video films which are available on our website, and anybody who would like to download or use them, please go ahead and use them freely for all NGOs. Flip books, especially for tobacco, then of course discussions, talks, doctors, and other things. So awareness is a big piece. I don't know what is right. So we've benefited about 18 lakhs people in this. We started some health centers. There's a village right next to the only production unit of Max in Punjab. And this is the first place actually I started work, because when you first start, I didn't mention that I actually joined Max to start the foundation. So, right in the beginning, sitting in a corporate office, you don't know where you need somebody. So the village was the ideal place, which was already there right next to the factory, and factory people had been, giving little philanthropic things to them, school ko kuch de diya or something. And there, they did not have any health facilities, so we started a health center there, besides doing a lot of work in the school. So besides that, in Uttarakhand, after the mudslide in 2013, we started a health center with a doctor, staff, medicines, and we ran it very successfully for 5 years. I've now stopped it because there's a primary health center that's come up, so we don't need to continue. And then we have some others in the vicinity of some of our other villages. Then there's one in Mussoorie as well. Sorry. Artificial limbs is something we took on, and we have one mega camp every year with Manav Seva Sanidhi, and the Jaipur foot people come to the venue. We get all the patients and we house them, we keep them there, board and lodging till they get their limb. They practice it and they go away. We've done several in Punjab, we did one in Delhi, and for the last 4-5 years we're doing it in Dehradun. And on an average 300 people are served every year. Besides this, there is Kiwani's Rehabilitation Center here in Delhi in Qutub institutional area, if some of you know. And for the last 9 years, we have been facilitating 15 limbs to them every month. So every month, 15 limbs is what we pay for, and people get those. Other than that, there's this photograph underneath. There's the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, gives these motorized vehicles once a year, and we've been sponsoring some of them and given them out. There is so much to be done, but I suppose that's what you can do. Now, one of the important things we realized right in the beginning actually is that there can be no good health without a clean, healthy, eco-friendly environment. And therefore, when you speak of health, you have to speak of environment. In fact, in the villages that we've adopted, I'll talk to you about it, our tagline is, Swachh Raho, Swasth Raho. Cleanliness first. So besides the planting of trees, the cleanliness, the waste management, there's a lot of things we do. I've written a few points. We started the jute bags before Delhi government had banned the polythene many, many years ago. I think maybe in 2008 itself. We have a monthly environment tip, which all our employees get, and also our well-wishers. If some of you are on my mailing list, you must be getting it definitely. Dr. Upadhyay is right here. Do you get it every month? Yeah, okay, I'm so happy. So then solar lights we put in one of our villages, which did not have any lights. This is in Dehradun on the hill road. So we've put in solar lights. That's made a huge difference, and that's environment friendly as well. And we for the upkeep of the road cleanliness over there, we have a vehicle, and we've got employed some people to do it. Tree plantation is big. This photograph on the bottom left was just last week, where we concluded the plantation of 2,500 fruit trees in the homes of where the village we have adopted. We had done 2 plantations earlier, one in an open public area and one in the school. But survival rates, I'm sorry to say, no matter what you do and say, no matter how many tree guards you put in, whatever, they don't really survive. Everything is stolen, lost, or whatever. So now in the homes, I think we have a better chance, and the NGO who's supporting us is going to maintain it for a year. I mean, they're going to oversee the whole thing, so I think that is better. These are some of the other things we do, as I said, allied environment, nutrition. I can't help but say our lovely friend here, Shalini, I just showed her a photograph. I was in Purkul Youth Development Society last week. We have a long-standing relationship. We've became friends with Swami many years back. And he said, you have to support us. I said, hum education to karte hi nahi hai. I can give you doctors, I can give you health. He says, we have lots in Dehradun. So I can give you immunization, which we do now. And we also support them for health and nutrition. So all the fruit and vegetables that the children get. And I was very happy right in the beginning to get a report of how the BMI of the children has gone up. And last week, Mr. Harvant, your principal, told me that those Navjeevan children, who come from, you know, underprivileged areas from outside. He says within 10 days of their coming and eating here, we could see the smile and the twinkle, and they're really doing much better. So that is nutrition. There are some other NGOs we support. Then sanitation and clean drinking water. We've provided to a number of MCD schools in South Delhi, besides in the villages which we have adopted. Now this is the village adoption program. As I said, 4 years back, we decided to adopt these villages, and these are all the things. I will not repeat them because I've said it, but I just want to say solid waste management was one of the first things because it was so dirty and so filthy. So we bought a tractor, trolley, and we employed 4 people, and we tried our best to get the panchayat to pitch in, but they insisted they had absolutely no money. So we said, okay, let's start. But the homes, they pay 20 rupees each, and that in itself made a huge difference. It took us a lot of struggle to find a plot of land where we could actually dump. There was no government or any other place, so panchayat land, and now we've put in a composting machine over there. So the wet waste is composted and the dry waste is being taken away. So that I wanted to say, that's getting along. And another thing, sanitation, because the other things are, as we said, sanitation. Now we did something which I think nobody's done in any village. I know, correct me if I'm wrong. We've put in a complete network of sewage pipes underground, connecting them to sewage treatment plants. It's a huge project and most of our money has gone there. But considering it was such a large cluster, it's almost a town, not a village, 15,000, you know, population. So we have started that. It's in the 4th phase. And in the 5th phase, we are going to do biodigester because there's no place for an STB which we can. So this is a very major thing. In fact, after we started last year, Dehradun mein shuru hua tha. You know, Dehradun still had homes had their own individual pits, that's it. So now they're digging up. And I was telling the people of Dhakrani that you're so lucky now that you have this already. Financial literacy, the last point, and environment awareness is something that our Max Life employees in Dehradun area, they go once a month and visit homes, at least 25 to 30 homes each time. And in fact, I think it's more than that. It's 25 teams visiting 100 homes. That is it. And they tell them about financial literacy, about saving and all. Unfortunately, the women all say that the husband drinks and comes back at night and there's nothing. Because they're quite poor and they're mostly farmers, you know. So hopefully now the women will start saving after all we tell them. One thing which I did not mention there, which I must, is a skill training center which we have started there for school dropouts. Now we don't do education, but this was under mental health. Because the children who has all school dropouts, you know, they all go into drugs and there is really antisocial behavior. The first batch, and they're actually learning English, a little bit of speaking of English and computers. The first batch of 26 passed out and 22 got placed. This batch, I visited them last week, only 5 have got placed yet, but 13,000 per month. Wherein the parents are getting, somebody's getting 3, somebody's getting 4, somebody's getting 5. So that was good. And when they spoke to me, in fact, I got the ward members to hear, and you must ask anyone else. Beautiful English, what confidence. And one of them actually got up and said, when the ward members were there, आप लोग अपने गाँव में लड़कियाँ नहीं निकालते हो, उनको कुछ सिखाओ. And she started off in English, my name is this, I want to do this, and I want to do this for my community and that. And all of us were stunned. So this has been really very successful. We're going to start the 3rd batch in January. Now, we give a lot of financial support to NGOs. Please, NGOs, please see this. This is 1/3 of our work, most of our work. See, whatever the corporate may say or do, whatever experience we may have of working, we need the people who are working with that community, who have the faith of the community, who have the experience of the community. And that is the way to go about it, I believe. I'm answering one of the questions, so sorry for taking that 1 minute more. that you can work, you can closely monitor them. You see, people say NGOs are bad because they feel they have too much of admin expense or they're not actually doing any work. I mean, our job is first to assess what they're doing. Secondly, if they fit into what we do, of course, we need you. I'm always thanking them. On our 10th anniversary, we had a program where we invited our partner NGOs to thank them for the work they do on our behalf. Because honestly, without them, we couldn't have done anything. But yes, we monitor them very, very carefully, and we get quarterly reports, we get photographs of patients, we get photographs of those who get the artificial limbs, and whatever we can do. I mean, we have to justify to our company that every penny is well spent. So I'm not going to read the list. Please see where all Can Support, Can Kids. So that's why I'm saying Indian Cancer Society. So cancer has been main, but that's not the only thing. We give medicinal and we give a lot of other NGOs. One person right in the beginning, if I may take the liberty of saying, came and said that, ma'am, when we came, अब बहुत फ़र्क है. Normally हम corporates में जाते 3-3 महीने चक्कर काटते रहते. And on the very first day you said yes. I said, look, I say the yes or the no on the first day. Because you either fit in or you don't. And if you fit in, we do what we have to do. So I don't want to waste your time or mine, to be honest. So it's either a yes or a no. So these are some of the NGOs. We have a regular a newsletter which goes out. We have an environment tip which we spoke about. Here again you can see how many NGO partners we have, how many locations, and how many beneficiaries. So it's been a wonderful journey, but I would say that there are miles to go before we sleep. And we can only do it with all of you, but all of us have to come together with sincerity.
I think there will be a lot of NGOs who will be coming around you when you come down from here right now.
They will be looking forward for funding from you as well.
No, it's okay. I have to say, I get a lot of requests per day. So therefore, I haven't had to go out. I'm just fortunate. We just get a lot of requests, but I'm sorry that we can't fulfill all of them. We have very limited budgets also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohini, for the wonderful presentation. I've been doing a lot of masterclass on CSR, and when CSR started, the first question most of the corporate people asked, हमें करना है कि नहीं? ये हम पे apply होता है कि नहीं? और मुझे पैसे खर्च करने हैं नहीं करने हैं? From there, now it has come to a place where people ask what new they can do, what kind of innovations they can do, and how exactly they can create impact. Taking the discussion forward, now I'd like to invite Suja to talk about her experience of implementing CSR, what has worked, what has not worked, and her views about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Suparna, for inviting me here. I came all the way from Bangalore for this program. And maybe I talk about my experience as a person more than I am not a part of Infosys CSR as such, because Infosys CSR is all about Infosys Foundation and their large projects. So as a person, maybe I have to quote my mother, a single parent. At some point of time, she taught us that when we have more money, we are more powerful. We can give more. So I wanted to not to be emotional. So I'll come back to the point later. So what I want is like, I have only one life. I know only one life, Infosys life. It's a world-class campus. Everything is best in class. And I have a wonderful life. So at some point of time, maybe the tsunami time, I started working for some of the projects in Nagapattanam. From there, the journey was quite beautiful, because other than the regular work for my living in the sustainability team or education and research part or HRD, I have my time, that space which has to be filled. So I got into this volunteering part. Maybe some of you have said earlier, I was also a part of the tree planting team and one-day event and those kind of things. I was very excited about it. I was very happy doing that. But later, at some point of time, I realized that I have to lead that large team. And if you look at it, corporates, I am still saying that this one-day volunteering is good, madam, because you don't even know that where that spark comes. Because I was one of those one-day volunteering team member at some point of time. So we started working with this notebook drive type at 2000, maybe 10 type. So thousands of volunteers going and distributing books to the children. And maybe by the end of 2011, I found that I have all volunteer contribution. I had 45 lakhs rupees in my hand to contribute to the children only for the notebook drive. So employees have contributed, and more than 1,000 volunteers were working different parts of India, contributing to the schools by distributing books. And from there, you don't believe how many people have moved to different projects, environmental projects, volunteering projects in a big way, full time, from that one-day event. So even now, I still promote that one-day event. I know that it's difficult for the NGOs to manage those one-day events. Still, I feel that that has to be considered because the corporates work like that. And from there, I work with corporates, but I feel that inside a corporate, I am more powerful than moving to a one NGO work. So I started working, and then at some point of time, Infosys has a policy called community empathy, which I was also a part of the initial discussions. It has come. And I took an offer from one of the organizations near Bhutan border, just outside Bhutan, Indo-Bhutan border. It's called Bodoland. I don't know any of you are from Northeast or heard about Bodoland. It's all known for violence and all that. To be very frank, we also had experienced the violence, trouble, everything. But I feel that is the best place I ever lived because I learned everything, the leadership from Bodoland. And I still say that the corporates provides, and yesterday I was talking to Vijay, I was telling that I would like to say the private-public partnership. So we keep talking about nation building. What is nation building? It's all about three of us, like government, social sector, and the corporates. Corporates have fund. The social sector has all the skills. Like they don't have the job, they want job, and the money they don't have. But they have the leadership quality. I found the villagers have much more leadership quality than some of the people I have met in corporate. They have the skill set to change whatever available to a big project. And also the way they pick up things. I met somebody in Bodoland, third standard failure, and he picked up internet and applying online all those applications, PPF, everything through online within 3 months with a second-hand laptop. So all these leadership skills, maybe I am confident to sit here and talk maybe some of the learning I got it from there. I felt that that was one university for me. And then come back to Infosys, what is happening now is like the sustainability in a big way. Environment is one of the major area. And the CSR, the major, Infosys ranks 5th in the CSR funding. When it comes to the 2% profit after tax, we have spent more than what we are supposed to spend. So mostly we are working with the large projects like this year we are supporting Metro. Again, the technology, the capability of a corporate is using for a government project, which is helping the community again. And lots of projects like Akshay Patra and all that funded by Infosys. So for me, learning from Infosys and working in a community which is helping me in a big way. So something I learned, I think one-day volunteering is important, and the funding from the corporates are important. And what I found, another thing which I found is in the NGO sector, in the village level, small organization is not able to take big projects. They don't have the capacity. Maybe some of the corporates, including you, can help the smaller NGOs to capable enough to take big projects. So this is something which I worked with the CIA. I was a part of CIA CSR Bangalore. So we did an capability enabling program for the NGO sector. Almost 20 NGOs came. You don't believe some of them got large funds later from because they realized that they have to pitch into a corporate with 1 minute. The initial programs when we did it, we asked them to present their story to 70 slides by an NGO. Nobody has the time. You come out with one slide and say that this is our USP. So we found that people learned so much from that program. I think some of the funding can be used for enabling NGOs to pick up large projects, communication skills, found good work in the NGO sector with not even knowing one word in English, but they are doing amazing work. And I also found, I don't know whether Kalpana is here, I asked her to come. I was a part of one of the organization here called the JCF, the Mundka railway station, metro station. And they come out with some 600 women. Basically, they are all victims of rape, domestic violence and all that. Completely life-changing experience. All of them came to the stage and talked about their experience, some of the 10 of the people. So it was amazing to see the world is changing, the India is changing as such. I think individuals are contributing more than I think we have to connect with the corporates, the government and social sector. Together we can make a difference. And I also recently, I can say that as an individual, whatever I can contribute, I am contributing. The entire organs donated. Even the hair, every 3 months I'll cut and donate to an organization for cancer victims it keeps growing. Third is recently, last week, I found that the skin can be donated for acid victims, which is available now. So I take care of my body so well because it's meant for somebody else. So maybe that's, and at the end, I also work with a lot of children in Uttarakhand, Assam, and various other places. I am remotely connected, online support, connecting with the funding agency and a part of Caring Friends in Mumbai, which is connecting 30 NGOs in the remote villages in India to the corporate sector. So individuals. So individual level, if I can do all these things with all my difficulties in life, I think all of you can do much bigger work.
Thank you, Suja. Such inspiring words from you. The next question is for Krishan, and I wanted to do this specifically before lunch because he is going to talk about GST, and I have requested him to make it as simple as possible so that I can understand. So I will request now Krishan to talk about GST's implication to corporate and NGOs and what one needs to do be prepared for it.
Thanks, Vijay, and good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for having me here. It's very inspiring and inspirational to hear the stories which I have heard. And being a tax expert and part of a consulting organization which only does tax work, though we all are engaged in some or the other ways to work with the environment, work with on the CSR benefits, etc. But it's good to hear these stories, and it's very inspiring to actually look at how and what people are doing in terms of these initiatives. But my topic is a little boring, so I'll try to be as simple in terms of what I wanted to share. The first and foremost part is that when you look at CSR activities and you look at NGOs doing various activities for all the corporates, people just believe that since most of these activities are for the environment, for the poor, for sustainability, etc., all of them are actually not taxable. So that is actually not true, unfortunately. So the CSR activities, it's a list which is very wide. The coverage is very wide. Initiatives towards poverty, environment sustainability, hunger, children, women empowerment. All of these activities are part of CSR initiatives. But if you look at the way the law is worded on the tax side, we are going into an inclusive taxation which is covering most of it, which is negative list, if you've heard of it. Negative list is basically a list which, except for those activities which are covered under the negative list, everything is taxable. So what is the exemption which is provided under the GST law? And since the time GST has come, there are a lot of ambiguities which have come up in various sectors. But the law which is related to charitable organizations, entities which are registered under the 12AA of Income Tax Act, which are doing such activities, NGOs, which are covered there, all of these activities are very specifically listed there. So the list of activities which are actually exempted from GST is a list of 6-7 activities only. And if I just compare a couple of them, so in the CSR, you talk about environment sustainability, and that is what is mentioned. If you look at the entry which is under the GST as an exempted activity, it is very specifically towards environment-related activities for wildlife, forests, etc. It does not talk about all other activities. Similarly, on the education side, the activities which are mentioned in CSR is promotion of education. But under the GST exemption, it only talks about specific activities on educational skills for specific sector. It does not cover everything. So the way both the entries are listed, there is a difference between the two which ultimately results in an ambiguity whether the activity is covered for an exemption under the GST law or not. Now, the government had a chance to actually widen this list during the time when GST was implemented. that was actually not done. All the activities which were earlier exempted under the earlier erstwhile service tax law is now part of GST law. So what is mentioned there is these services which are provided by entities which are covered under the section 12AA of the Income Tax Act, which covers all the trusts, NGOs, etc., which are mostly registered. All of these activities for charitable purposes. Now the charitable purposes are defined to include only 5 to 6 activities, which is what I was talking about. It talks about specific care counseling of certain ill persons. It talks about specific education programs. It talks about specific activities in relation to environmental sustainability, not all. So what one needs to understand is, as corporates, when you look at these initiatives, you should understand that when an NGO comes to you, or a trust comes to you, or an entity comes to you who's registered under the section 12AA, they may ask that, we are not sure whether the GST is applicable or not. So they try to include that. And many NGOs actually are not even aware whether they need to charge GST or not. That's the first fundamental question. So for one NGO or a trust or an entity to understand the tax implications, they need to actually look at all these activities which are enlisted. The intent of the legislature, and when it comes to exemptions, is that read the exemptions strictly. You cannot interpret an exemption to be widely meant. What is written is what is exempt. There is a huge amount of ambiguity which arises on the terms which are mentioned there. So you need to understand what is the coverage. You can't compare what a CSR activity is and what an activity is under the GST law which is exempted. So the activity which is part of CSR initiative may not be exempted, and that is where one needs to really be careful in terms of determining, is there a tax liability associated with it? Because the tax liability, if it is associated, is 18% on that value. So any grant, any donation, any funds which are used for these activities, there is a possibility that the GST may be applicable over and above at 18%. And that's something which is, unfortunately, the law right now. So my advice, at least to all the entities who are doing these activities, or corporates who are getting these activities or initiatives done, is that please read these provisions very carefully. And if the activity is not covered, by entering into tax inclusive arrangements and telling the NGOs that your funds is 100, so your tax is also part of that obligation, actually that cost might be a cost to be incurred. So if that cost is to be incurred and compliance has to be done, we have to make it happen. Now, second question is how the legislature looks at it. So there are some rulings and there are some precedents which have come up where it is specifically mentioned that the CSR activity, if there is a tax which is being charged on it, it is part and parcel of a larger business function. You're not only actually doing this as a service to the industry, or you're required to do it under the company's law, but it is also promoting your own business activity, your own reputation, your own goodwill. So when you are charged taxes, like part of NGO activities or CSR initiatives, if you're charged any taxes, you should also be able to get the input credit for that, which means it's not a cost to you. It is part and parcel of your credit, which you'll be using it for the purpose of discharging your main GST liabilities, which could arise on your manufacturing, on your services, depending upon whatever activities you do. But this should not be a cost. So if at all GST is charged, there has to be a credit which has to be associated with it. And there are certain precedents which have taken that view. But if you look at the way the tax authorities look at it, they still feel that this is not an activity in relation to your business. It is not directly connected with your business activity. So why should we give you credit for this? So one side, there is an issue that you are paying taxes. On the other side, there's an issue whether you should be eligible for a credit of that. Because if it is not available as a credit, it adds to your P&L. It adds to your costs. So one needs to be very careful in determining the taxation around these activities. On the other side, whether the credit is not available or is available also should be determined, so that this does not become a cost. And tax authorities will only look at it from a perspective of collection of tax. They will not look at what is not covered there, what is worded, whatever the wording of the law. They will only go by that. And if there is an ambiguity, they will determine it as a taxable activity. And that's what we need to all understand. And there have been representations by certain NGOs which have gone that we should marry all these activities, make this list more exhaustive. However, nothing much has been probably done as yet, but what I understand is there are considerations being given to these, but if something has to happen as a change, it has to happen as a sector change. So that is something which has to be kept in mind while we are living with this law which is evolving as of now.
See, at the end of the day, do we have to pay it or not? so that is the question. If you have to pay, then you have to have it's 2% plus then 18% added to that. So the extra which is getting added and you don't get the credit for it, then I'm spending that.
Yeah.
So again, this is a burden on the company, and for any company which is spending 10 crores, 20 crores or 30 crores, it's a big number.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
that is what it is. The activities are restricted,
okay.
And that is what probably the message is as of now. So when you look at these structures, we need to understand whether GST is applicable or not on these activities.
Okay, so that means there's a lot of work for consultants to suggest on GST and what needs to be done.
It's also a compliance issue for all the NGOs.
There's a lot of work for you, Vijay.
For him, we are not doing tax work, so it's fine. Okay, exactly, she sees the future of CSR now going forward.
Well, actually, I'm very optimistic. I think since 2014, all those who were not doing regular sort of, earlier it was philanthropy, got kind of nudged into it. And I think that was really good because it sort of gave direction. And if I'm not wrong, I think about 11,000 crores have been spent on CSR. And it may be a drop in the ocean, true, but I'm sure it's made a great difference. So I'm very hopeful. I think it should do well, and hopefully we should be able to go well beyond the ticking in the box, which maybe some corporates are still doing. I don't know if there are people who still don't know what to do or how to go about it, which was the case. So hopefully not, but I'm very hopeful. Yeah.
On a very hopeful note, now I have a lot of questions, but I will open the floor for questions so that at least you can get it through, and if there are some questions which are not covered, then most probably I'll ask them. So okay, yeah, ma'am, please.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Padmini Kumar from Joint Women's Program. My director is sitting here. Just wanted to know, in the CSR, there are a lot of ambiguities. When CSR funds come, they say you will, most of the time, it's only used for education or maybe empowerment, and empowerment in a different way. You know, there are certain things which are specified. Now, we are working in Uttarakhand, apart from other little places, and we are working with women farmers, single women. We are doing literacy, we are trying to skill them, and also we are trying to incorporate their skills into their own self-sustainability. But then those things don't get covered, like, you know, under the, suppose the implements have to be bought. They're all women farmers, single farmers, owning very small land. So, you know, suppose we are providing implements, that doesn't get covered. Does it get covered under environment? Does it get covered under empowerment? So these are all the ambiguities which we go through, and we, would like to...
Okay, like what Krishan mentioned, the tax law, it is written as it is, so we have to interpret it. But CSR, it's clearly mentioned, you have to take it liberally. So whatever you have mentioned, it's covered in one section or the other. I go with a very simple assumption that whatever in development sector you want to do, the 13 points which have been mentioned, you can easily fit whatever you want to do within that. There is no such clause. Any development initiative that you want to do, it can be taken up. It can be women empowerment, it can be on skill development, it can be on environment. So don't worry about it. If you are doing this work, you can easily put it in one or the other schedule 7 activities. Please be sure about it. Don't worry about it. Yes, sir. Yeah, you have a question.
See, my question is, you know, this under that Companies Act where CSR was adopted, you see, 2% is to be spent for CSR under various activities. It is a net profit where the companies or corporate have already paid the income tax and other taxes to the government. Now, this is a social sector. This money is to be spent to the poor, to the villagers, this thing. And up to 20 lakh, if you see GST, up to 20 lakh turnover, it is not obligatory to get your company or NGO registered. No, I don't find any logic that it is only expenditure on various activities, not revenue. It's expenditure. If money is given, money that NGO spend money on some activity, and then what is the fun of having 18% tax on that? Don't you think there is ambiguity, and as a tax consultant you should take up with the government?
So it's one thing to say what is covered and what is not covered. I will, sir, the point is that when you look at the indirect tax law, it actually hits your pocket indirectly. And it is a transaction tax which we are paying. That is the environment in which we are today. And if this collection is basically towards the supply of goods or services, the manner in which the 2% is calculated is only a calculation mechanism of the spend. Okay? That does not take into account the actual tax incidence which can be applicable or made applicable by the law or by the constitution itself to tax the supply of services and goods, unless they are specifically exempted. So unless that activity becomes exempt, that becomes taxable. And because of that activity being limited to those activities which I talked about, these activities have to be looked at over and above what you are actually calculating your total spend on. So the tax amount is never calculated as part of the spend. That's another issue or ambiguity, because that is not covering taxation part of it. It only talks about the spend. So whether your amount of 18% gets added, one, it is a matter of obviously understanding and interpretation. Second, whether it's to be added in the part of the total spend is something which has to be interpreted under the law which governs that particular spend. I don't think both the things are marrying, which is what I was telling you. And that is the reason why we need to look at GST or any other indirect taxes separately.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Let's give him an opportunity to speak on the next fireside chat. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tanu from Birlasoft. When you talk about GST, GST is applicable for service agreement if you have with NGOs. What about grant? Is GST applicable on grant agreements also?
So, when you use the word grant, okay, what you have to see is when the grants basically come. So, if there are grants which come by way of import of funds into India, and there is a specific exemption there which says import of any services which are meant for these charitable activities, that is not taxable because there is a specific exemption there. Okay, when you receive similar funds in India, if they are meant for these charitable activities, basically that's what the question is. The services which are basically being provided in this particular activity are to be exempted. The manner in which the money comes, by whatever name called, cannot be the determining factor for the purpose of taxability. So what you need to understand is that money which is coming as a grant, a donation, is it specifically exempted under this law?
From the corporate perspective. Like if you are we are signing a grant agreement with some NGO.
Yeah, so that's exactly where it is. The NGO will ask you for a taxation for activities which are not otherwise covered here. But if they're covered in this particular, definition of charitable activity, then that taxation should not arise. Okay. That's simply put.
Because CSR is in India only, so it will be covered.
So CSR is, like I said, I'm not going to mention CSR as an exempt activity here. I'm talking about the activities which are covered
done in India
for charitable purposes, and it is exempted under the GST law. Specifically exempted. Unless specifically exempted, it is taxable.
Correct. Because there are very specific.
So there should be some regulatory body like income tax and all for this CSR also.
See,
because there are a lot of open-ended points.
See, when we say there should be, there is a lot of things there should be. Yeah. So these are things which are evolving. Maybe this is something which will get considered as well. So let us look for it. But presently, this is where it is.
Just for example, a few days back, we are having a merger with KPIT. So we were just looking at the clause of merger from the CSR angle, which we could not find in Act. So there are certain things which we request to governing body or ICA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, to just work on it and clarify the doubts.
So you want to have merger as a CSR?
No. Okay. What will happen to the companies who are working, who are putting their funds in CSR when they go for a merger or an acquisition?
Good point.
All right, I think we should,
Oh, there are more questions.
I'm sure, but you know what? I think we need to wrap this session up because we've got the father of CSR himself sitting right here in the audience. And in India, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, and of course, Geeta Goyal. Let's move on to our next session, and maybe we can take some more questions later on through the networking lunch. Yes, of course. We'll have conversations. So I'm glad that everybody is getting so involved with. Yes, Shalini, go ahead.
May I request Ms. Geeta Goyal, Director of Michael and Suzanne Dell Foundation, to come and hand over a token of appreciation to our esteemed speaker on behalf of SABERA.
With a loud round of applause, we're in the land of karma, remember? Thank you, Mrs. Daljeet Singh. Thank you, Suja, for coming down from Bangalore. Thank you for supporting us, Max India Foundation. Thank you, Vijay, for moderating this. Thank you, Krishan. There are a lot of questions for you, Krishan. You've got to stay back for that lunch.
We will have a working lunch then.
We will have.
Should we stand here?
बहुत फोटो खिंचवा ली मीडिया में रह के